He wasn't speeding, he wasn't swerving, he wasn't breaking the law. He was just driving home after another long day at work, but the flashing blue and red lights still appeared in his rearview mirror, bright, sharp, and urgent, slicing through the night like they were chasing a fugitive. The truth? This wasn't about traffic. This wasn't about safety. It was about a uniform, a badge, and a man who thought he could size someone up by the color of their skin. The officer had no idea that the man he pulled over wasn't just another driver. He was the man who could end his career. What unfolded next would leave reputations shattered, expose ugly truths, and force an entire department to face something they'd rather ignore. And the question that lingers is this: when the truth finally comes out, will it even matter? Marcus Hale was not a man you could easily intimidate. In his mid-40s, with a calm presence and eyes that had seen more than they ever revealed, he carried himself with quiet authority. His salt and pepper beard framed a face that rarely betrayed his thoughts, but when it did, you knew you were in trouble. By day, Marcus worked in a part of law enforcement most civilians didn't understand: internal affairs. He investigated officers, reviewed body cam footage, followed paper trails, and asked the kind of questions that made bad cops squirm. He wasn't popular in every precinct, but he wasn't there to win popularity contests. He was there to protect the integrity of the badge. That Thursday started like any other early coffee. A barrage of emails, meetings that could have been calls, and one particularly draining interview with a rookie officer who'd been caught lying in his report. By the time Marcus finally left the office, the sun had long disappeared, and the city was wrapped in the dim orange glow of streetlights. He decided to take the back roads home. They were quieter, faster, and spared him the stop and go of the main highway. He kept the radio low, the steady hum of the engine blending with the muted rhythm of the tires against asphalt. That's when he noticed a white police cruiser pulling into the lane behind him. At first, he thought nothing of it. Cars came and went all the time, but after 2 turns, it was still there. After 3, it felt deliberate. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. He'd been on both sides of that windshield. He knew the difference between routine patrol and targeted attention. When the lights finally flashed, his stomach didn't drop from fear, just from weariness. He pulled over smoothly, shifted into park, and rested his hands calmly on the steering wheel. The officer emerged from the cruiser with slow, deliberate steps. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and walked with the kind of swagger that wasn't confidence, it was control. His hand rested near his holster as if to remind Marcus, without words, exactly who was in charge here: license and registration. He barked. Before Marcus could even say good evening, Marcus handed them over without hesitation. The officer, Daniels, according to his badge, barely glanced at the documents before beginning a slow lap around the car. "You know why I pulled you over?" "No, officer," Marcus said evenly. Daniels smirked. "Failure to signal back there. And you were moving a little quick." Marcus had done neither. But this wasn't the moment to debate. The questions began: where was he going? Where had he been? What did he do for a living? When Marcus answered law enforcement, Daniels raised an eyebrow. "That's so. Where at?" Marcus simply replied, "Downtown." He wasn't lying, but he also wasn't going to give Daniels ammunition. Then came the request, no, the demand. "Step out of the car." Marcus complied. He stood tall, hands visible, posture relaxed. "Mind if I search the vehicle?" Daniels asked. But it wasn't really a question. The tone made it clear he expected a yes. "I do mind," Marcus replied, calm but firm. "You don't have my consent." Daniels' jaw clenched. Only people with something to hide say that. That line, Marcus had heard it 100 times. It was a script some officers fell back on when the law didn't match their ego. The street was quiet, but the air was heavy. Marcus could feel eyes watching from behind curtains in nearby houses, and then Daniels crossed the line. He stepped closer, gripping Marcus's arm, steering him toward the hood of the car. Marcus's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Officer Daniels," he said, "remove your hand from me now." Something about the tone made Daniels pause. It wasn't a plea. It was an order. Marcus reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately. Daniels's hand twitched toward his holster, but instead of a weapon, Marcus pulled out a leather badge case. He flipped it open. Internal Affairs Division Chief Investigator. The silence was instant and absolute. Daniels stepped back, the blood draining from his face. The second officer, who had arrived minutes earlier, shifted uncomfortably and looked anywhere but at Marcus. "Your internal affairs?" Daniels stammered. Marcus didn't blink. "I am, and I know exactly what you've been doing here." The shift in power was immediate. Daniels, who had approached with swagger and intimidation, now looked like a man who had stepped into quicksand. Marcus didn't raise his voice. "He didn't need to. I suggest you return my license and registration. Then we'll talk about what happens next." Daniels obeyed, his earlier arrogance evaporating into awkward silence. Marcus took his documents, placed them neatly in his pocket, and said, "This stop is over. But the conversation isn't." The second officer looked uneasy, like he wished he could disappear into the night. Marcus stepped toward his car, then paused. "You'll hear from me," he told Daniels, his tone calm but final. "And so will your captain." Without another word, Marcus drove off, leaving the two officers standing in the wash of the cruiser's headlights. The report Marcus filed the next morning was meticulous. He documented every moment, every unnecessary question, every baseless accusation, every unlawful attempt to search his vehicle, and every physical contact without cause. Internal Affairs didn't move slowly when the chief investigator lodged a complaint. Within 48 hours, Daniels was placed on administrative leave pending investigation, but the real impact wasn't just a suspension, it was the conversation that rippled through the department. Officers whispered in break rooms. Captains held closed-door meetings. Some defended Daniels. Others weren't surprised. For Marcus, the confrontation was more than just a personal insult. It was a reminder. A reminder that even with a badge and authority, being a black man in America still made him a target in the wrong eyes. He thought about what could have happened if he'd been someone else. No badge, no title, no leverage. How many men had stood on that same curb, under those same lights, and walked away humiliated or didn't walk away at all? It haunted him, not out of fear for himself, but for the people who couldn't flash a badge to stop the injustice midstream. Weeks later, Daniels resigned. The official statement said personal reasons, but Marcus knew better. The incident never made the news. There was no viral video, but in its own way, it was a small victory, a crack in a wall that needed to come down brick by brick. And yet, Marcus knew that one victory didn't mean the war was won. The deeper question remained: how many more times will this story play out before something truly changes? To the viewer, it's easy to think this is someone else's story, someone else's problem. But Marcus's story isn't unique. It's just one chapter in a book that's been written for centuries, over and over, with only the names and faces changing. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe you've lived it. So here's the real question: what will you do the next time you see injustice? Will you turn away, or will you speak up? Because silence is how it survives.